Good morning. This is Joy Gilfillan, president of the Restorative Community Coalition and host of I Change Justice podcast, which you can find on Spotify. That's our station where we talk about the business of justice and how it works in the real world that's below the story that's told in the outer world about what crime and justice and the criminal justice system and everything else is about. I'm here with some of the members of our board of the Restorative Community Coalition. Irene Morgan is on the call with us today. Debbie David is on the call with us today. One of our assistants and a woman who's here from Germany, actually helping us look at economic development things, is here, Alona Krohn. We've got Beth Brownfield, who's one of our very dear friends from Whatcom County, who works with a lot of the indigenous people. We've got Karen Ball, who's here from San Antonio, Texas, and she's with the Compassionate Cities Project. We have Frank Baldwin, who's also from San Antonio, Texas, and he's doing a lot of our administrative work behind the scenes as we're recording the episodes today. And then Kasia is from Yakima, Washington, who also has been helping us a lot with the video production and specifically with the PowerPoint that I did on Tuesday that had to do with fear mongering to joy producing thinking, and introduced a lot of the constructs that are behind how it is that and why it is that we're hosting these conference calls. We have guests Mel Hoover and Rose Eddington, who are also local, and then Debbie David is our primary speaker this morning, who will be talking about things from the mental health, early childhood, prevention, disabilities, this whole arena. We'll be introducing her more in a few minutes. But let me open to say that the Restorative Community Coalition has been around since 2006. We were founded by Irene Morgan and a group of local people who were concerned about the growth of the jail and justice system. And most importantly, they were concerned about how to help people that were exiting the prison industry, the prison system, and were trying to re-enter society successfully. And there were a lot of barriers in place. And Irene, as a therapist and person who works with people, she volunteered to many of the nonprofits in our community. And she realized that there was this big gap after she met a fellow who had written a book about the jail experience that he went through. And he attended her meeting, and he wrote a book called It's a Matter of Time. She got inspired by that, and she created the Restorative Community Coalition. Most of the people who attended the very first meetings with her were people who were members of the DOC, Department of Corrections, and they had an interest in helping with restorative justice. Jim Kozad was a very active member of the coalition, served as our executive director for a good many years at the very beginning. And he worked with the Opportunity Council, I think, right? And as a community affairs counselor type specialist. And he built a program called the Restorative or the Reentry University program, which was our first training material that helped us to understand how to start working with people who are dealing with reentry issues. I came along then in 2010. I got involved because as a businesswoman, I'm looking at the coalition and I'm going, you know what, why is this so not funded? This is such an important part of our community. And the biggest thing is I recognized that our county executive, our county prosecutor, our county council, all these people, our county sheriff, were all promoting the building of another jail, another big jail. And they had a spec sheet out on that jail to be like 2,450 beds in the next, they were planning on that kind of a growth rate. And they wanted another 800 beds to be produced, 850 beds to be produced by 2014. That was 4 years. We had just built a new jail in 2004, 2008, and we'd passed a behavioral health tax in 2008 to try to help the people in mental health. And yet there was a disparity in what was being told, what I was witnessing, and the amount of money going out for institutional development and hard costs, but the money was not coming down into the community to help the people. And so as a businesswoman, I went, there's something wrong with this story. I need to do some due diligence. And as a business person, start asking some questions because I thought there must be some kind of miscommunication going on. Irene wrote me into helping her, and her vision to create the Restore a Life Center at that time had not been fully expressed. And I went, what is this vision? And she had a vision of a facility where people could come in, they could get help, whether they were going into the system or coming out of the system. Family members could come get assistance. There was a hub for being able to coordinate people's needs. And it was based on the Delancey Street project out of San Francisco that had been very successful for many years, completely funded by philanthropic donations, volunteers, and people who were going through the system, who are coming out of prison. They had a housing program. They had an auto parts, paint shop. They had a beauty shop. It was completely funded by helping people get back in the working world. And it made total sense. San Francisco is a big city. They were dealing with felons. And so they put people into a 2-year program to help them learn how to re-enter society, how to budget, how to take care of themselves, how to get some kind of a credible job or a certificate. So when they went back into the market, they could actually have letters of recommendations, networks, some training, some understanding of how to get along in the world. And it was exceptional. And they had at that time something like an 85% success rate. It was off the charts. And we went, you know what, that needs to be duplicated. How in the world can we do that in Bellingham? We don't have that many felons coming out of the system. We have some, and they were going through the work release program, but we didn't have something for all the people who were going into the jail system, who are coming in and out of the jail. And yet the jail industry wanted to build a prison in Whatcom County that was 2,450 beds on spec. And we went, we got to do some research. So I got involved. We started doing research and we started educating the community. We brought, over the past 13 years that I've been here, we've brought in over 100 different interns from the various colleges, volunteers from the community, more of them. We've worked now, Irene specifically has literally worked with thousands of people who she writes to by letters, like snail mail, into the prison industry. And now she's finding that the information going in and out of the prison industry, because of COVID and because of shutdown at the prison level, there's a lot of complications there. And they've put a lot of their communications into a technological system that requires the inmates to pay for services. And it's very expensive. It's very awkward, but her knowledge from people living inside the system coming out has literally been the bedrock upon which the Restore a Life Center and vision has been built. It's the bedrock upon which the Restorative Community Coalition has been built. And over the last 13 years, we've done an enormous amount of research. So today you're going to hear from 3 different people who have worked with us in various ways over the past 13 years. And they're talking about their lived experience of working in the system. They're not specifically talking about what my work has been as president of the coalition and as a voice. Debbie David is our first presenter this morning. She'll be on it. She'll be starting shortly. And she's going to be talking about ACEs, resilience, mental health issues, how to actually work with people who are dealing with the deep trauma of our society. And she's got lived experience both as a spouse of somebody who's been inside the system. She's been inside the system as a person working in corrections. She's been inside the system as a person who's working with administration. She's been inside the system with a spouse who worked as a jailer in the department in corrections in Whatcom County. And She's lived homeless. She's been dealing with mental health issues with her family, with children that are labeled disabled or handicapped or whatever the term is. She's going to give you the new words. So she's going to be our first presenter, and we're going to be inviting people to share resources and ideas, because that's the point of this conversation. As time goes on, we'll have more members of the community joining us. But I wanted to get the initial introductions out there just to get us started. Then at 1 o'clock, we'll have Doug Gustafson. Doug Gustafson is the person who's been spearheading the tiny home community. And he's developed a couple of different tiny home villages. Doug, in the very beginning, started working with us, did a lot of our tech support, and helped us when we were initially starting. And he gained ground over the years and built these tiny home villages. So he's going to be talking about the efficacy and the reason why, when we do tiny home villages and when we do all this advocacy work we've been doing, it's critically important to work with people who have lived experience. Lived experience means people who actually know what's going on, boots on the ground in the streets, because this is very different than hiring people who have degrees and who look good on the surface because the system says they look good and they have titles, but they may not know anything at all about what's actually happening to the human beings. So Alona, in the last couple of days, Alona did a presentation about how our systems, the dominative systems of our culture and our society, have actually created an overarching group of people who manage corporations and nonprofits and bureaucracies, but they're very disconnected from the people who are the boots on the ground, who are often called our civic refugees. And they're the people who actually take the brunt of the hurt when our systems don't work. So that's at 1 o'clock. Doug will be here, and he'll be bringing on some of his colleagues to talk about how building systems in the center that are not controlled by government, not controlled by government funding and rules. They're actually working for the people, with the people, to help the people. And then at 3 o'clock, Shanae Keltz will come on. She'll be speaking from the lived experience of having been inside the jail and justice system locally and statewide. She spent 4 years inside the prison in Washington State. She's going to talk about what happened to her as a young person. She's going to show you what it's like working with the system, inside the system, and what it was like coming out and then getting her certification so she could work in crisis services, so she could administer facilities. And she's going to talk about the need for Irene's vision to manifest locally, called the Restore Life Center. So that's the agenda for today's series of calls. And I want to welcome Kasia first. I want to welcome Kasia first to the call to share some insights for how to behave, like Zoom call etiquette, because this is a new platform for most of us. And she's got some ideas for how she mutes and unmutes and invites people, etc. Go ahead, Kasia.
Hello, everyone. And I guess some of the people on the call right now already learned the etiquette, but just a sweet reminder that everybody shall respectfully keep their microphones muted. And if not engaged with the conversation, please close your cameras, just for the respect of the people running the show. Thank you so much.
Actually, in this particular case, we do want people, I think, to have their cameras on. Are you saying, though, Kasia, that when we turn off our cameras and we turn off our mute, it doesn't interrupt the presenter if they're in a formal part of the presentation?
Oh, absolutely that way. You know, I was trying to be quite short, since everybody here already knows what's the drill. But yes, because of the recordings, it is important that in the future, people understand on this or other calls that when your accident noise from your environment is interrupting the call, the Zoom recording will be switching the view from the presenter to your camera, which is kind of unprofessional at this moment. So again, for the respect of the why we are here, or in whatever other occasion, this is the basic etiquette that everybody should just understand and then respect. And also, you know, if you are trying to put your finger into your nose or do other things, you know, that's the good moment to cover your camera or just turn it off. Or if you turn on, if you answer your cell phone, a phone call from, you know, relatives or your boss, or if you are planning to go to open the door because FedEx guy is here, all of those, you know, random occasions, those are good reasons to you know, to both mute and turn off your camera. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kasia. So you're up, Debbie. We're going to be introducing you as the primary person today. You've done, I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that you've done, and most of your work has been done in the silence mode, because you're one of the people who has been here since I've been here. You came to one of the very first meetings I was involved in, and you have had to be silent because you're at risk. And this is one of the big problems we have in our communities at large, because as soon as you start to speak out, you can become vulnerable. You can become the prey to a predatory system, to people who are predators or privateers or profiteers in the system, and you can put loved ones in danger if you speak out and say too much. So you've been silent a lot for the past 13 years, and yet I really want to acknowledge that you did most of the research, at least getting us most of the links and gathering information together for this Stop Punishing Taxpayers, Start Rebuilding Community report back in 2015, when we wanted to include what were some of the solutions in the market. And we wanted to give people examples and notes inside the system. We talked about the problems, we talked about the opportunity, we talked about how things could help, and then here's links of things you could examine, because we wanted to give what's called the big, fat, hairy, audacious goal picture to the it's called a BFAG in marketing circles and business. But it's a great big picture of what could be if we didn't build a jail system. How could we run our communities differently? And you did a lot of that work. And you've also been the person who has been posting literally hundreds, thousands of videos and links to our Facebook page, the Restorative Community Coalition on Facebook. So let's welcome Debbie. In this instant, I'd like everybody to come off mute and give her a round of applause, because she is absolutely a stunning, staunch ally and board member for the Restorative Community Coalition. Thank you.
Yes. Hey, Debbie. Welcome.
So welcome to the show, Debbie. Go for it.
Joy, you're awesome. I love you.
So you need to speak up as loud as you can and get as close to the camera as you can, so that we make sure that we've got good sound.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
We can.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. That was awesome. And I love you. So, and I'm so excited and delighted to be here today. And thank you for those who will see this later, because this will really help people. And I'm so excited to be a part of it. What I'd like to do first, because something that my mother modeled for me and the lifestyle she led, but never put it into words. And now I've come to put it into some words, because I think I get what she was trying to do, is that it's each of our individual responsibility to bring our best self, the best version of ourselves, to whatever we're doing, whether it's engaging with family, friends, workplace, community. And the way I'd like to start that at this session that I will be sharing more information is to give us each a little dopamine boost. And the way we're going to do that is to first take a nice, slow, deep cleansing breath. And then just gently, quietly in your mind's eye, visualize 3 things just to yourself. You don't have to share it, that you're thankful and or grateful for. I'll give you a few seconds to do that if you can come up with some things. Okay, and it's from this space of love, compassion, empathy, generosity that I would like to talk today and share about some of the things that I feel like I can't take credit for finding and sharing other than they show up for me. In my mind's eye, ever since I was young, I never asked the question when something happened, why me? I always asked why. I was very curious about how things work, why things work. And approaching life that way, these interesting bits of information pop up. And since I've been involved with the coalition, as Joy referenced, going on 13 years, one of the early things that came up for me in asking why was the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which was the Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente did a joint effort in bringing this information forward from 1998. Subsequent data has been collected that has expanded this study. And for those that aren't familiar with it, the study looked at adverse experiences that children aged birth to age 18 experienced in those early years and how that correlated to their health and risk factors for mental illness and risky behaviors in their adult life. One of the taglines for the study's now more developed movement called PACE's connection, PACE's being positive in adverse childhood experiences study, is they envision all people, all individuals in a life that they thrive. We all have the potential to do that if we do the outreach needed in order to help those that have not had the opportunity to have support in their healing their trauma. So Kasha, I believe, was going to be posting a page that has links to a number of websites and other posts that you can look at to get more information. However, what we know about what we can do to help this heal these ACEs is first awareness. And a recent TED Talk I watched, the speaker, can't remember the woman's name now, but I will find the link and share it, asked certain questions of her adult audience and asked them to stand up or raise their hand if they experienced any of these things she was about to list. There was a death in the family, divorce, job loss, serious illness, a variety of things that if we are alive, we're likely to have an experience of some kind of loss. By the time she was done asking the questions, there was no one left that wasn't standing or having their hand raised. So this begs the question, what level of resilience do we possess as an individual? Resilience being the ability to regain your equilibrium after a traumatic event. So everyone's resilience is very individual. However, whatever level an individual is at can be enhanced and elevated so that they can better rebound and regain their equilibrium after an event, after a stressor. So in the links that Kasha will be sharing, positive and adverse childhood experiences connection, that link has literally hundreds, if maybe not thousands, of resources on how we can address these situations, including developing individual safety plan, like doing an evaluation. Do I have triggers? Are there things that are triggering for me? We're aware that the population group that many of our partner organizations, such as Bridge to Services and Serenity Outreach Services, their population group that they serve are triggered by multiple factors, including being in a place that's unfamiliar to them. So are there ways that we can support these individuals to help them address and heal so that their opportunities for safety, for their sense of safety increases? The answer is yes, there are. One component of what's available as a link on the PACES Connection site is resources available through Harvard University. These are free to download and read and utilize. And they have what's called Center for the Childhood Developing Brain. And they talk about and show images of their MRIs of images of a child that's at age 4 experienced childhood stress and one that has not. And the architecture of the brain actually changes. It's like a shrinking effect, the brain of the child experiencing these stressors as compared to the one that hasn't. Now, you take that over a lifetime, how many areas of that individual's life do you think are impacted by that change in the architecture of the brain? These are things that we know are happening. We know they exist in the here and now, and we have the tools available to make this different. What's going on in our communities with our homelessness and with the criminalization of homelessness and with just in general, everyone's health and safety, these are public health issues. Another link that is in the post, the World Economic Forum in 2019 addressed that public health is very strongly linked to economic security. So when we see a large number of our citizens that are homeless, that's a big red flag that funds need to be directed towards support and healing and maximizing their opportunity to live their best life and thrive, not to criminalize them, because whatever adversity happened in their life led them to be in this space. It's not okay to scapegoat our citizens. We are all connected. We are all of the human family. And this is of critical importance that we do everything we can to connect, to help heal and uplift and support them. Joy, I need to look for something on my computer. So if you want to intervene and ask questions or direct me somewhere that you feel like I need to go, I'm happy to do that.
So my thought is that if you know where I can turn on your ACEs page and I can allow people to click through it, I just realized that I could show that URL and let people see what you're talking about. Then you don't have to control that also, but you're welcome to look it up. But if you want me to look up ACEs childhood experiences at a specific site, that would be really awesome.
I'm going to give you their homepage because, you know, it's so interesting too, because when this movement first started, it was only about the study. And
I know it was like nothing. When you first started talking about this, Deb, there was almost nothing out there. It's like nobody knew about it. It wasn't a big deal. And you found it and you went, wow, look at this. And I remember thinking, wow. And now today it's like all over the place. It's really affecting the way people see these problems. So have you found the URL yet?
Yes, I'm going to copy it and send it to you.
Okay.
In chat, but I'm going to do it through Facebook chat because otherwise I'll have to move my phone and that's where my camera is.
Right, that's fine.
So
I'd like to add something else while you guys are doing that.
Sure.
The backstory of this ACEs study is that it wasn't about what it turned out to be. It was about people losing weight and how they could and becoming successful in their lives. And what happened was that the people would do really, really well for a certain period of time, even up to years, 1 or 2 years. But then they hit a plateau and dropped out of the program. And
Yep.
so that then brought the ACEs forward, because everyone that dropped out that they were able to find had a traumatic experience that kept them from continuing their forward progress. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Irene, because I recall very clearly that the specific ones that didn't make it, the traumas they experienced as children were quite significant. It was physical abuse, sexual abuse. So I'm hoping I'm not triggering anybody by bringing some of this up, but it is significant. And when we don't heal what's happened to us, it manifests in parts of our life that are often very unexpected. What's known specifically when it comes to girls that have been victimized as children, the risky behaviors that they can engage in as teens and as adults include drug addiction, promiscuity, gambling, shoplifting. I mean, and as they age too, the health risks increase in autoimmune disorders, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. This again all comes back to public health. It used to be, I believe, public health was viewed as our physical health, and ACEs helped change how we address that, how we look at it, our awareness of it. The connection between trauma and its impact on our mental health, and then its impact on our physical health, finally gelled. And any time we approach a social situation that is not working, a social issue, such as homelessness, we have to look at the underlying causes, which obviously we understand a lot about it, and then not continue to penalize those individuals for having situations they had no control over, but look how we can uplift and support them. It is in each one of our best interest to take care of one another. In fact, that's another link that I've shared that Kasha should have, is that caring for one another, it makes us more healthy.
Debbie, I already shared the documents and I made the comment in the chat, so everybody can download it to view all of your links.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm just glad to know that it's there, so that a lot of what I'm talking about, you can go read more about, so I don't have to go into it.
So
But
one
it
question,
does matter. Yes, go.
Debbie, I'm trying to share the screen of the PACES chart. So if you're looking at the screen and want me to click on a particular spot, like I'd like to be able to show a link to the ACEs study.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it, and I'll send just that specific one.
Yeah, and I can click around in here a little bit because I think this is so important. There's a about us, our partners, PACES connection staff, directory of how-tos, cooperative of communities, how to be part of PACES connection, invite others to join. There's this resources list as you're looking that up. It's about ACEs and PACES scores. It's about handouts, how-tos, map the movement, media resources, mental health or trauma recovery. I mean, there is an enormous amount of stuff, seriously. 13 years ago when Debbie started, there was like one document. I mean,
it's interesting because it took a while. The study began in 1998, and it took a while before it garnered and gathered attention and focus from. But eventually the CDC realized its value, and they joined with the original study founders, which was Kaiser Permanente, to expand. So yeah, Joy, if you want to talk, I'll go ahead and look for this because I think I might be able to find it faster than you.
Okay, and feel free to just take that link and stick it in the Facebook chat,
Okay,
in the SOS, the lounge, and I'll pick stuff out of the lounge and open it up on this page.
good. Thank you.
You bet. And right at the moment, I'm looking at what is the pace of science, and I'm looking here at the CDC Kaiser Permanente a study originally. They're talking about brain science. They're talking about the health consequences, historical and generational trauma. That has been big information that we've been learning about as time has gone on, and how the resilience research, once you understand, remember, I don't remember even what movie it was or what story it was, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. But an ounce of that's the one I was looking for, was an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And boy,
Yes.
I'll tell you what, this ACEs information, the neuroscience, the brain science, the trauma informed care, all of this, that especially when you're dealing with people who have lived experience, it's incredible what an impact doing prevention in the trauma care services, whether it's the children or the parents who are suffering from ACEs, who are then putting it on their kids, and the ripple effect is generational. So being able to solve this problem is huge.
Yeah, and I'm not able to find it because
okay.
there is so much information on here, but yeah, it is a wealth of information, and basically any question that you have about brain science and children and healing, I mean, they address resilience as well. Another thing that I'd like to bring up that I got really excited about this morning when I saw it is that Yes Magazine, who I absolutely love, if those of you listening haven't had an opportunity to check out Yes Magazine, please do. They've got a story in here from this summer, how to decolonize mental health treatment for persons of color. I mean, the information's out there, and it's quite concerning that we, as advocates and activists that have gone before our community leaders and shared information, and it often can fall upon deaf ears, we have the information and the tools to be able to implement things, and somehow coming together to deploy this and to employ this, to do hands-on with greater tools than what have been used in the past. The other article that was in this recent Yes Magazine was about how good health is contagious. They know from studying that in communities where a high level of that everyone in the community. So if we have those individuals that are struggling just to survive, we know that that has an impact on it, even if we're not aware of it directly. It's been scientifically proven that it has its own impact.
And we absolutely know that. I know that you know that, Deb. I've been working with it. Irene's been working with it. And to have studies that validate it, help people to understand that common sense works. I mean, it's common sense. Anybody who is a mother, anybody who's a father or parent, and you work with children, you know that children react to violence. They react to negativity. They react to things. That doesn't mean we know how to fix it, because we haven't necessarily been trained about that. But the fact that good news and happy people is a contagious human experience. So, that's what I'm showing the image of this Yes Magazine. It looks like they've got some good information in here about social isolation, highly social people versus others. It looks like they're publishing in this particular article a comparison of the odds of decreased mental mortality, complex social integration. These things are right here. And how does it work? Emotions that impact health are a collective phenomenon. This is amazing information, and I'm so grateful that you found it, Debbie. This is awesome. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here as you keep talking.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. So again, I'm really excited. We are and will continue to do better than we have for our most vulnerable citizens. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to connect with other like-minded people, that how we can support each other. There's been a couple of things that have come up for me about how can we disseminate some of this information? How can we reach a broader group of people? And one of the things that I'm aware of from just a number of years working civil service in the Midwest is how to look at organizational structures and how information can be disseminated that's fairly organic, and also obviously, you know, I don't know if non-threatening is the right word, but as supportive as possible. But one of the things I know exists in our community, and it's likely others as well, is that we have appointed by the mayor for City of Bellingham, we have neighborhood groups. And for example, there's lettered streets, there's Sunnyland. They're according to, you know, who lives near other, you know, your neighbors basically. And there are these meetings that happen that if the elected president of these neighborhood groups could be offered information about, could you disseminate this to your group members? There are ways that community is linking with community and other venues as well. There's actually a global organization right now. It's called Buy Nothing, and it's a gifting organization. And I've heard about it, signed up for it, and have gifted others things that I wasn't using. And what's interesting about this gifting community, I got to meet one of the individuals yesterday. I picked up a floor electronic giant 5-foot-long piano from one of these people that was, you know, offering it. And I got to meet her, and she's like, I just love this group. She was out walking her dog when I went to pick it up on the porch. Her calm and her presence and her way that she like was giving of herself. This is the kind of community member that would likely also be interested in supporting other people in other ways. So each of us has an opportunity in every interaction with every person that we meet every day to provide maybe a little nugget of information that might benefit them to look deeper into how we can continue to connect and make a healthier world, healthier community for each other. So I just feel blessed that I had the foundation that I did growing up. I experienced adverse childhood experiences myself. However, I had caring adults in my life that embodied what resilience was and helped me find that too. I had my great-grandparents and my grandparents in my life every day until I was 9. I recently came across a post from a teachers group that were trauma informed, and it said, every struggling child is one caring adult away from becoming a success story.
Wow, that's pretty profound, Debbie. And I know that you've been involved at so many different levels with so many different people. You know this up close and personal. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being such an incredible adult. I know that, and I don't want to take you off course from what you want to talk about, but at some point, I'd like you to share a little bit about some of the challenges that you face as a grandmother, and that you have faced in working with so many people dealing with children who are traumatized, or people who are dealing with mental or physical disabilities of various kinds, and how this affects them, because the fact that children are mentally or physically deficient absolutely directly links to how they're going to end up with homelessness, or how they're going to end up in the criminal legal system. And so make sure that we talk about that at some point, and you can go back to what you were going to say about learning about growing up with this, but I certainly want to make certain we have time to talk about that today.
Absolutely, Joy, and I'm glad you came in with that, because I may have ended up forgetting it. So I was blessed to have 6 grandchildren within 7 years. So grandma boot camp, hello. And of the 6, 2 of them are diversely abled. I have a grandson that has Down syndrome and a granddaughter on the autism spectrum. They are delightful, beautiful, precious creatures. And they have challenges. One of the things that is so blaringly evident with children of diverse abilities is that when their language, their ability to communicate what they're feeling and experiencing is limited, they have no other choice but to attempt to communicate through actions, through behavior, through gestures, through trying to get attention to what their need is. And that's extremely challenging, because with children that can't communicate, mostly, you know, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, I need to use the bathroom. You know, you can respond to that appropriately and adequately and in a timely manner. With children that have limited ability to communicate that, intuitive is one of the words I'm going to use, because I learned that first before I learned some of the skills that you can actually be taught that's not necessarily intuitive. But I'm going to go back to babies. Babies have different cries for different things that they need. They have a cry for when they're hungry, a different cry for when they're wet. Not all mothers know that. That's one of those wisdom pieces that can be passed on from generation to generation, but isn't always. So somehow we need to figure out how to connect and how to learn that language and how to respond appropriately. Part of why I'm bringing this up about behavior and communication is that with adults that have unhealed trauma, they may not know how to communicate how their experiences have impacted them, and they may be triggered and react inappropriately to a variety of situations. One of the goals of people that work with us in the coalition is to attempt to look beyond the behavior at what potentially this behavior may be attempting to communicate.
So I want to interrupt for a second, because you're being very politically correct in how you're speaking about all this stuff. And
Okay.
I'm going to be the adversarial person who talks about the fact that when you have a child that's acting out, they may push, they may shove, they may yell, they may scream, they may throw things, they may do all kinds of things that are inappropriate, and you can't corral them. You can't even catch them and pick them up and hold them down. You know, when that child has needs that are not being met, they act out, and that can be looked at as not minding, not having any manners, not being right. They get put in a corner, they get sat on, they get shoved around, they get locked in a house. I mean, these things cause reactive ripple effects that are additionally traumatizing. And so when you go from the early childhood stuff to middle school and high school, and then they get labeled, and then they get, you know, I mean, this stuff just compounds. And then you have an adult who's having a severe emotional or grief reaction or a severe problem, and they end up acting out. I mean, they may yell, they may scream, they can stomp, they can appear threatening, they do all these things. But if the people that are the adults in the room don't understand this act out stuff, we do all kinds of stuff, and our law and justice system is absolutely set up to arrest people and give them felonies. Like, we had a guy that was inside the jail who was arrested because he was mentally distressed. He actually called for help because he was afraid he was going to commit suicide. So he was told to call. He calls for services to 911. They send a sheriff or a police officer to them. And instead of the mental health worker who should have been called, who was supposed to have been called, that person ends up in the jail. Claustrophobia sets in. He's scared. He starts flailing. They put a straitjacket on him, and then he bites at them or spits at them. Those are felonies. That's what they can charge them with. And then suddenly the person comes out, and he was literally trying to communicate his fear. He was trying to communicate. I'm not saying that it wasn't dangerous for the people in the room. I'm just saying that sometimes you have to give them space and work with it. And Debbie, you're doing an amazing job of talking about it from a very polite, very compassionate place, because that's part of your training. When you walk into a space, you learn to bring your energy down, and you learn to not yell at them, and you learn how to work with them and how to calm them down so they can express themselves so that you can hear. And that's part of this big problem that we have in the law and justice system. And it's certainly one of the problems we have in the bullying and in the homeless situation, where people are in survival mode. So I just wanted to give you some relief there and explain to people so they understand that when you're talking about this, that's the exact opposite of all that other stuff.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you put it in that way. And yes, I actually observe, I'm a home care aide, so I'm involved in the daily activities of daily living of my two diversely able grandchildren every day. And so I experienced that. I witnessed that. And I have to tell you how challenging it is and how much energy it takes to be around that. Even though I've healed from a variety of my past traumas, I still find it on some days that I might be tired. I still find it triggering, and it's not a simple task to come back to balance, to center again. And I'm really glad you brought that up about how individuals that are being responded to by 911 are not approached in a non-threatening way, that they're approached in a way that actually escalates the problem. Right. Because again, one of the links that I'd really like to draw people's attention to in what Kasha shared for me is called Right Response. Right Response is a training curriculum. Their tagline is de-escalate anyone, anywhere, anytime. I encountered this information at first time was working as a community support specialist for an organization called Service Alternatives. As a community support specialist, my job was to be present and in support of adults with a variety of disabilities, not all developmental, but some that disabilities might have come as a result of a car accident or a stroke, or some people that have had cancer develop some pretty significant brain fog, and they don't function at the capacity they did prior. But the thing about this program is there's a free downloadable 20-page, Joy's showing it, booklet that's accessible to anyone and everyone. Why do we not have this being utilized and embraced and deployed in a variety of, to me, every workplace should have this, definitely law enforcement. And what else is interesting, that the secondary instruction that if you actually become certified in this de-escalation training is that they talk about, in order for us to be at our highest capacity to de-escalate others, we have to be at our most calm state. And that's described, and they even explain how to get to that state. There's a it's not going to be available in this because it's part of a paid training that you have to pay for the training, that there's a wheel and it talks about people's optimal performance range and how to acquire that. And it includes things like getting enough rest, getting enough water, getting enough physical activity, connecting with, family and friends that make you feel uplifted and supported and cared for. Again, it's about community and connecting and how we are there for each other.
So the thing that's exciting, Debbie, I'm going to interrupt again, because
course, please.
what's exciting about this is that when Shanae is talking later on about having a facility like the Restore a Life Center, one of our biggest visions, and you've been working on this for a while, like emotional resilience and emotional first aid, having people in a restorative community coalition sponsored type Restore a Life Center that's like a hub. It's a community hub for gathering this kind of information, this kind of resources, and then training some of our lived experience people so that they not only have the lived experience, but they have the certification to back it up to be able to help people on a volunteer basis. I mean, this could help us in every circumstance all over the community when you're having difficulties.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the point of having a Restore a Life Center as Irene envisions it, because you can have different parts, and people who are parents or kids or family or spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends can come in and get the training, and we'd have a location where we can host trainings and certifications and coordinate our true community continuum of care that is not about focused on somebody being wrong, but is focused on helping people be righter and better at de-escalation and humanization.
Absolutely. Treating individuals as humans, because there's much in our culture that is not focused upon doing that, especially those that are acting out in ways that are socially unacceptable. What you said too about the emotional first aid, it triggered a memory of a conversation I had recently on the homeless lounge, actually. And it was about, so one of the trainings and certifications I have from my past is CERT. It stands for Community Emergency Response Training. So this organization is a product of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Administration. And the program CERT was created in the years past the Mexico City earthquake, which I believe was in the mid-80s. They saw a great need. Okay, with that earthquake, there was literally hundreds of volunteers that attempted to go and help people that were trapped, people that were injured, people that had no access to food, water, shelter, restrooms, whatever. But what they found after that earthquake is so many of just the, person on the street volunteer, they themselves became injured or even some killed because they had they didn't have any training, but some of them just didn't even have maybe some basic self-preservation skills. So they ended up putting themselves in danger, at risk, trying to help somebody else because they're like responding just out of urgency and not necessarily kind of preparing themselves in a way to keep themselves safe. So this training was created so that people could safely be volunteers to help others.
So that's the emergency first aid training you're saying. So that was like,
That, what I'm talking about, this is not first aid. This is about when there's a disaster like an earthquake or like a
Yeah.
flood or whatever. But
but the
reason it's
emotional,
important, right? But it's what I see as important too is that when we have all these wonderful people in the community, these volunteers that are out there day in, day out, boots on the ground, helping others, that it would benefit them to help keep them safe and grounded, etc. If they had at least a minimum of some kind of public health and safety education as they go out into the community. Not only that, I really feel like as we evolve and move towards our individual potential, there's an energy we possess that others can pick up on, whether, I mean, we're modeling it. We're modeling a healthy, positive, forward-thinking behavior. When we do that, however we've come to that place, that helps the other person that we're supporting.
absolutely.
You know what, I don't know if you call it osmosis, but obviously, you know, we embody something that's beyond what we were doing before, what we possessed before. So that's part of what I think needs to also be exposed to the whatever groups that we can get it to, the neighborhood groups. You know, if I could, I've been thinking about how to do a similar to the Buy Nothing movement that is like, you know, how everybody's buying into that. They're like, oh my gosh, I can really see the benefit from that. And people are so, they feel so good about giving. They feel so good about, oh, I'm so glad you could use it. And we just have too much stuff. And it's save it from a landfill, save it from being manufactured and bought in a retail store. This can be part of our survival and saving the planet as well. There's so many layers to this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we could, no, this is absolutely valid, Debbie, because what we're talking about is building a sustainable community hub where we can actually trade services, knowledge, and skills. So let's say we have this facility that's supported by the community, just like the Delancey Street project. We can have companies that are recycling furniture, companies that are coming in. We have, Irene knows someone who can do welding, who teaches accelerated welding skills, so that someone could come in and actually, that has a criminal background or who's homeless, who wants to learn to do something with their hands. They can come in, they can get training in this facility or in our affiliated networks. The whole point is that you don't build one big facility, you build 50 of them. You've got 50 different groups working all over the community in different cities and different towns, but they're networked through a coordination center that is networked by people who have lived experience, who understand that when you're needing to get something free, where else can you go get things that are being given away on purpose so they don't go into landfills? Where can you go? We need a thrift store that's actually, in fact, working for us and with us, that's contributing money back. And what we can do is we can put our community members into the thrift store, teach them how to run cash registers, teach them how to run hands-on projects, teach them how to inventory, teach them how to fix. I mean, we had in Whatcom County rag finery, and we had the Alliance. What was the appliance
depot, which is now closed, but yes, we for a lot of years.
But we had the appliance depot, we have rag finery, we have, I mean, the same guy that founded rag finery and the appliance depot is the same guy that started the food bank here. I mean, we have, and he lives in Bellingham. We have some of the most ingenious nonprofit developer people who have been doing community work, and we need to bring them together in this alliance and start rebuilding our community from the ground up so that people can be safe, so that we can start helping in our community, doing exactly what you're talking about, Debbie.
Absolutely.
And we have a dozen business propositions ready to go. We've been working on this issue for such a long time. Everything's ready to go. All we need is the funds to do it, and it's a no-brainer.
We have business models that we've figured
Thank
out
you.
are actually sustainable, they're renewable, they're rebuildable, they're regenerative. We need the facility to be able to coordinate so that people can do it. And we've got means inside, and we've got means inside the system. Because guess why a lot of people end up in prison? Because they're enterprising people. They've got the attitude of free enterprise to start with. It's just that they couldn't make it in the normal business world. We can build business plans inside the Restore Life Center platform so that we can model. I mean, it's business is business. It's business. It's business. It's business. The models are the same, but they're small pods of people, and not everybody is capable in the society to run a whole free enterprise business. It's complicated, but you can bring pods of people together, help them build their business plan that can work in the community. They can get certain kinds of credits. Even when they launch the business, you can get group insurance type things. You can actually help little tiny pods of people get back into the marketplace and become tax-paying citizens instead of tax consumers. Okay, that works for the community. It might not work for corporate business, the big guys, but it works for small business people. And that's what Debbie's talking about, is that if we work at the base with emotional resilience, we understand trauma, we understand the complexity that comes from the beginning to the end of trauma in life, we can help mitigating that. And that's what Debbie has become an expert at. So keep going, Deb. I didn't mean to side trip, but it's just useful.
Absolutely. And one of the things that can occur too with in situations where there's diversely abled children is the siblings and the extended family members are impacted, and there's a level of stress that they experience out as well. And to support people, support individuals in that situation, I've been finding that's quite a struggle. And the trauma-informed care, or the trauma-informed awareness, I've been finding that I would expect is that the public school system has not, we've had to do a lot of advocating for the siblings to allow them to have more support in the classroom. I am so thankful for those that already understand the value and importance of advocating and being an activist, because nothing changes unless we bring our voices forward and our passion, and to keep speaking our truth, speaking truth to power, as Joy would say. Joy, I have I need to have a break. I'm sorry.
Okay, no sweat. We can keep going.
Okay.
We can keep going, because what I can do you have another one or two references that you would like me to point to that I could bring on this on the thing? I'm not figuring out how to open that document. So
which document?
The one that you sent with all the links?
Yeah, I am in the chat. I'm noticing some other people are having difficulty opening it too. I tried.
So even if you could email it to me, I can open it directly, and then I don't have a problem.
Are you talking about the reference page, or which?
Yes. Yeah, your reference hyperlinks. If you send it to me, I can then open the document, and then I can open things for people.
Okay.
So the thing that's exciting is that when you start looking at the Neuroscience, Heart Math Institute, the Neuroscience Institute, somatic therapy programs, IOPT, integrated, I forget what IOPT stands for, but integrated, I'll look it up actually. because this one is the one that I really had to learn about, because there are so many people dealing with serious generational trauma. I mean, we've talked about it a bit yesterday and the day before, because what happens is that when you're in a family that has been traumatized by genocide, you've been traumatized by war, you've been traumatized by the social issues, that if it's not talked about, and people don't like to talk about things that hurt people's feelings, and it's actually kindness that's creating our problem. I mean, it's the most absurd thing. When I finally got that, it's just, I blew out and I went, wow, you know, it's because we're kind. It's because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. It's because we don't want to accelerate the trauma that people don't ask, how can I help, or what's going on? Because we don't want to hurt people. And then we end up defaulting on the opposite side, and we back out of situations where people actually want to talk, need to talk, and don't know how to talk safely. So the point of emotional first aid, the point of all this trauma-informed care, the point of being able to do things with consciousness is about reconnecting to our emotional spirit in the first place, reconnecting to our commodities, reconnecting to who we are, is really, really important. So identity-oriented psychotrauma therapy is one of the things I want to talk about, because this is okay, so this has been approved because it's in the psychotherapy realm. And so they talk about it, but you know what it actually is? When you go in and you do it, what you do is you sit down in a room. I went and got certified in, or got trained in this. I'm going to share my screen for a second. I'm going to share, that's the wrong share, isn't it? I'll move this over there really quick. Identity-oriented psychotrauma. What they've done is they've done a complete training of how to do basically mystical understandings, how to access your superconscious and your subconscious in a group. And they have people that stand in. This is similar to collective therapy when you do constellation therapy. People have been doing constellation therapy in family for years. Then they've done constellation group therapy for other people. And then they've done, I mean, my friend Robin Youngblood came and did a training for me that was called, it was nature-based trauma therapy. And it was, we put a whole bunch of people in the room at one of our seminars. It was the Reimagining Whatcom County seminar. And Robin came in and we stood up and we became like a rock, or you pretended to be a plant, or you pretended to be something else. And so you stood in these positions, and then certain questions were asked, and you were asked, how would you reply if you were in those particular situations? And what it did is you're asked to meditate on it and imagine it. And then you bring your imaginary awareness forward, but together, the group pieces together some really fascinating stuff. And this here, identity-oriented psychotrauma therapy has been pioneered out of Germany, and it's a huge pioneering process. And I attended a multiple day seminar on how to do this. And what was fascinating was to watch how quickly people could get out of, 50 years of disempowerment. And in one day, on one session, they were able to make shifts in their psychosis and their psychological state that completely changed their lives. And this is real world stuff. It doesn't fit inside our jail system because this actually helps people heal. But that's sort of a snarky thing to say. What I'm saying is that in the normal establishment-based thing where they have to cover their butt all the time over anything they use, they can't bring in stuff that's on the cutting edge. When they talk about best practices inside the system, they're talking about best practices that have been used for 40 or 50 years, that there have been dozens of white papers written about, that may or may not even work, but at least they're familiar. So people will often stay in familiar conditions and using familiar stuff, even if it doesn't work, rather than risk stepping out. And yet this is the cutting edge of conscious awareness of how to actually work with our human heart. I'm going to type in Heart Math Institute here, because this is a really cutting edge institute that has been doing amazing work in the power of using the heart to help you make changes. So they've got research, they've got resources, heart math tools here. I'm going to scroll down just for a minute to help and awaken the heart of humanity to what we can do to help each other for personal stress relief, for social fulfillment, for global hope and optimism. I've got friends who work inside Heart Math and who have been doing, you know, people that friends of mine know are people who have been pioneering this work. And we can bring this work to Bellingham. And at the Restore a Life Center, we can bring courses and we can bring speakers and we can bring trainers and help educate our entire community about how to do these things. That's powerful. So here, I'm going to click on the training homepage and it says, be a resilient mentor, be a trainer, be a certified clinician, add heart facilitator, you know, and it's all about this law enforcement, first responder resources. All of these are resources that we're going to add to our booklet, which is the 2022 resource list, because this is the stuff we can be doing and it doesn't cost a bunch of government money and taxes. What we need is a facility where we can coordinate this kind of wisdom, this kind of knowledge, and bring people to the table who will provide help. And this is what we could be doing and to help people get out of the trauma that we're dealing with right now in our streets, in our mental health facilities. We can reverse all this stuff. So Debbie's back. I'm going to give the conversation back to you because you've been posting about all this stuff on Facebook for us for a long time. So what else is on your agenda that you want to talk about today?
So I did find the infographic for adverse childhood experiences, and I put it in the homeless lounge chat if you're able.
Okay, I'm going to go in there and I'll pick out anything you've posted there.
It's funny because I had just before that posted Heart Math Institute on the chat before you start talking about it, because that was another thing I remembered that we encountered. So there is so much available to assemble and connect with each other, to share and learn about and then implement. And again, just like Joyce said, it's not going to cost a bunch of dollars. And I just find it strange, having worked civil service for about 17 years in the Midwest, that when citizens bring forward these solutions and studies and resources that are available on the internet and a variety of places, that we bring those to our leaders, our community leaders, and they're kind of like, somehow they either don't get it, or it feels strange to offer solutions and not have them be considered or even open for discussion.
I want to acknowledge that Irene and Debbie and I, for the first, I mean, Irene's been doing it for even the years before I got involved, but I can absolutely attest to the fact that Debbie, I, and Irene literally sent hundreds of emails with links and solutions to the sheriff, the prosecutor, the executive, the task forces, the groups, the councils. For the first few years here, we sent hundreds of emails with links saying we can do it different, we can do it better, because what we thought was they didn't know. And what we found out is that they didn't want to know, because they were on an agenda. Now, they didn't know that they didn't want to know. They just knew that they were on a different agenda. So I'm not getting mad at them. I'm just pointing out that they're siloed. And when they're siloed and living within a certain box and they're headed towards getting a system, that's what they focus on. And it doesn't necessarily serve the public. So unless we have a citizen-based movement, a community-based movement, which is separate, that's why the Restorative Community Coalition stopped even trying to recruit people to be members and allies for a long time, because allies and community members in the community had been shunned so many times. And if you bring to them a coalition that is helping criminals, that puts them at risk. So we finally stopped asking. That didn't mean we stopped doing our research at all. What it meant is we started doing our research and as to how to get around it, so that now we can build a real coalition of nonprofits that can come to us to solve problems in the future, not come to us to protest and to do rebellion movements. We even tried that for a while, and that there was some challenges in doing that. So Karen, go ahead and speak.
I was just going to ask Debbie if she was familiar with Thomas Hubel and his work in collective trauma. And he's got a project called the Pocket Project. And I can share my screen.
Yes, please do.
Please do.
So let me just make sure that this comes through. So I'm going to move my bar here so it's not in the middle of things. But they have something here on, there's a collective trauma summit coming up soon, but there's these community calls that you can sign up to be on, and essentially you are just being a presence and listening to people share. There was also a trauma-informed leadership course. So there's a number of things, and I put this link in the chat. So Debbie, have you heard of this project?
I have not, and thank you so much for sharing it. I just pulled it up after you referenced it too, so that I could save and reshare. We have the poor email is probably so full. I'm surprised it didn't get shut down, but we have an email address that when I find something that I don't have time to read the whole thing, that I send to one of our email addresses, and it's just full of all kinds of stuff. But thank you for sharing. This is not one of the ones that I've encountered. So how did you come up? Where did you come across this, Karen? If you don't
Well,
mind sharing,
I came across this through my work with the Charter for Compassion. So the Charter for Compassion had, met with Thomas Hobel, and we're talking in terms of what education program they might be able to put together. And so he invited us to become a part of the my tongue gets twisted, Pocket Project. And so there were a number of individuals associated with the Charter for Compassion that have taken up that call.
excellent. Saving this so we don't miss it.
So I want to speak for just a second about this, because we've got an amazing resource in Bellingham, Washington here. And she just published a book. Diane Sue is an amazing human being who just published a book, and even though she's not on the call, I'm going to talk about her. It's called Remarkable Resilience. And she talks about the life and legacy of Noemi Ban beyond the Holocaust. And this is a woman, Noemi Ban, survived not only Auschwitz, but the other prison camp in Germany or in Poland. And she was a Hungarian refugee, a Jewish woman who actually then had to escape from Hungary after the communists. I mean, it's like she went from problem to problem to problem during this entire lifetime. She escaped and brought her children through the border, and then had to escape from that border to get on a ship, come to the United States, and then had to rebuild her and her husband and her 2 children. They had to rebuild their life, and then without trying to pretend they were not Jewish, because we were dealing with Jewish issues in the United States as well. Then she came to Bellingham, and this woman in her 70s, she just recently passed, but in her 70s, she started teaching about the problems of the Holocaust. And she started to take people to the Holocaust Museum, to Auschwitz, to teach them about the prejudice and the problems of it. And when I read this book, Noemi actually affected me a lot. And it was because she was started to teach, and she would go into all of our middle schools in Whatcom County. And she went into prisons, and she started speaking all over the world, or all over the country, about prejudice and the love that she found that existed within the people who were in the Holocaust. And one of her big questions that she asked about was, why do we do this? Why do the people not stand up when they were first being herded down the street? And what she realized is that, I mean, she still leaves the question open, but what I realized from listening to what she had to say was that people don't raise their hand when the authorities have guns, when the authorities tell you what you're going to do. And when you're confused, you don't know what to do. So you stay silent and keep your head down, thinking it's safer. And in this particular case, Noemi, she lost her mother, she lost her grandmother, she lost her little brother, as I recall. The power of this book is really important in Whatcom County. And there's a whole resource of people that are available who have been educated about this, and yet they stay silent during this jail trauma situation, because guess what? We've been trained to be silent. Now, the power of the reason I bring her up is because she also happens to be the woman who wrote the story from Noemi Band's talking to her, is also the editor, one of the authors of this abnormal behavior. This is a 14-year textbook for professionals to talk about abnormal behavior. Well, this is also the woman who has just recently done all of Thomas Hubbell's work. And she's been studying and working in this stuff because she's interested. And she's been getting certified. And what she's also doing is working with grandmothers. And she's working with Saging International. And she's working with climate action. But she's not a big vocal proponent. You know, she's not out there. She's just doing her nice, solid citizen work. These are resources of Bellingham that we can tie together. This book here, sorry, Debbie, I've just got to speak about it. This guy is from Vancouver, BC. He's the globalization of addiction. He was a professor working in psychology. When he retired from his job, he became a, what do you call it? A person who's reading afterwards. He chose another profession to study, and he started studying history. And as he started studying history, he went, what the hell happened in downtown Vancouver? We've got all these people who are displaced. We all have all these kids who are dealing with adverse childhood experiences. They're dealing with all these problems because the native people were displaced from their land in the first place. And he started realizing that displacement from your land is what destroys people when you're not connected to the earth. And this is an issue that I discovered happens with a lot of the Black people who ended up coming to America, and they were displaced from their homeland and then turned into commodities. And there's this huge split that happens because of that. And people who are displaced from land, they have no roots. When they have no roots, addiction is part of the issue. So this is the globalization of addiction. I'm going to go to 2 more books, because these things can help people get a handle on what's going on here. My friend Christian Drapeau has written a book called Learning Fundamentals. And he wrote this because he understands that there's things that happen in the brain that you can fix with EMDR. and cross-pollination with actually helping people learn how to see and work and re-knit their brain, left and right brain. So this is huge. Then there's another guy, Johann Hari, wrote a book called Lost Connections. This is a powerful book that, again, is written by somebody similar, somebody about mental health and disease and depression. And he talked about doing all these drugs that the medical model is teaching you to do. And he said, they didn't help me at all. And so he did an enormous amount of work in understanding the science of depression. So those are, and all these people are accessible. And you know what? A lot of them live in Vancouver, BC. Guess what? We got friends in Vancouver, BC. We got neighbors who can drive an hour to come help us. We've got another one who's going to be on tomorrow morning, James White, who's going to be talking with us. He's got 38 years working in community living in downtown Vancouver with these people that are displaced and dealing in drug and alcohol addiction. Gabor Mate lives right across the border. He's the big guy. Debbie, I'm giving it back to you. Sorry, I got excited.
No, I'm really glad you did that. It gave me time to regroup a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was, so in October of 2021, 3 organizations in the US came together, the American Academy for Pediatrics, the American Children's Hospital Association, and the American Academy for Pediatric Psychiatry, that's what it was. And they declared a state of emergency because of the lack of mental health care available to our children. That's very concerning because that's almost a year ago. And it's also known that part of the issue with access is there aren't enough qualified, certified mental health care providers available for children to see. One of the things that never seems to get addressed, though, is that in order for our kids to be able to get the support that they need, even if you're connected with a mental health professional, there's, okay, if you have a family, you have other children, who's going to take care of the other children while mom or dad takes, the child to the appointment? Can mom or dad get time off of work? Do they have transportation? One of my grandchildren is in weekly appointments, and sometimes she misses them because her mom has to work, or I have an appointment and I can't watch the other 2 siblings. There are these outside factors involved in supporting a family who has the need for a child to have the support that don't get looked at. That, to me, that's part of access. If we don't have the free ability to allow our kids to get their needs met, then how are we able to help them get their needs met? We're not looking at the whole picture. So part of what I started thinking about, there used to be a fairly active group, and I just don't hear about it that much anymore, probably because of COVID and nobody was able to, to be a volunteer, but we had Whatcom Volunteers Organization. I know there's a training involved in order to be involved in that. I know there's a background check that occurs. These are all good things that I support. However, if we are able to look at developing a separate entity from something similar to that, I don't remember where I saw it, but credible messengers. So there was an organization that was supporting people returning from jail and prison, and they mentored the returning citizen with a person called a credible messenger. And the credible messenger was a person who had legal system involvement, incarceration involvement in their history. And they had come back in, they re-entered successfully, stabilized, got housing, etc. And when we look at the value of those, the lived experience, and the fact that they overcame the challenges that either both led them to make choices that led them to be incarcerated, and the choices they made to be able to become reestablished in community, you can't get that out of a book. You can't learn that out of a book. We need these individuals are valuable, and they need to know they're valuable, and they're essential to solving the problem. They're essential to successful reentry on an ongoing basis. They may not be aware of their value. I know that one of the things Shanae, who's coming on the call later today, keeps talking about, and that she embodies so beautifully, is that when she works with people, one of the first things she says to them is, "You are valuable." And that's so beautiful that she's come up with that, and that she does that on her own, because, and she says, or the reason she does it, and you'll hear her say this again, but I'm second voicing her because it's so important. People don't always know that they're valuable. They don't often hear that they're valuable. A lot of experiences individuals have as children and adults conveys to them that they don't have value. So I very much support and agree that we all need to say that to each other as often as possible, that people are meaningful and purposeful and wonderful to have in our lives. So kudos to you, Shanae.
Yeah, and Shanae, while you went off, I just spun off to another thing. I posted another link to Civil Survival. These are friends of ours, and Shanae worked with Tara Simmons, who's now a state legislator, who's now doing a lot of work in the legislature to make a difference in mass incarceration in Washington state. And so Tara Simmons is down here on the bottom right here. She's one of the founding directors of Civil Survival, and was also in prison herself. So there are huge movements, and later on this afternoon we're going to talk about the Yavapai County stuff that spun off of work that Irene Morgan did. So we have connections, and there are people who have connections all over this community, and we're dealing with a specialized group of people, those people who are kicked out of society. They're kicked out of the middle class for multiple reasons that are all related to emotional trauma. I mean, all of it goes back to emotional trauma. So why are we busy building these huge expensive things and hiring big institutions and corporations that are making money on the building of these institutions and corporations? And why don't we instead go back to the roots, which is dealing with stuff, Debbie, like you're talking about? So back to you again.
Yeah, and so I want to jump back to what I started that conversation with, which was about this this state of emergency statement that these three children's medical and psychiatric organizations made, and what that means if that is allowed to not be addressed for our future. We already know that the majority of the people that are in jails and prisons have unhealed trauma. So if where are these children going to end up as adults?
Yeah,
we have a huge hole right now that it's like falling off a cliff. After that initial article that made that statement, I haven't seen that much more to looking at, okay, what are we doing about this? How can we make this change better, whatever? What I know from a personal level, that if we promote information and programs that enhance resilience, build resilience for the adults and the children, that can help address where they're at right now and maybe help them become more stable. That's not a permanent or long-term solution. However, it's something each of us as individuals can do in our personal lives. I would really encourage everyone to look at what it says about resilience in the links that I posted. Were you able to open that, Joy?
I just opened the American Academy of Pediatrics and the AAP.
Okay.
I just posted
found
it, and
that?
I will.
Okay.
I have forgotten, I forgot the step to go take copies of all these things and post them in the chat. But
Yeah.
this image is up. Can you guys see it? Okay.
Yes.
So it's all about a declaration from the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Children's Hospital Association. I think this is really significant, and they talk about why it's here and what are the problems and why do we need to work on this. And last updated 10/19 of 2021. We're in almost into 10 of 2022. Why are we not addressing this locally at the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force? Why are we not addressing this? Or maybe they are, and I just have missed it. And it needs to go into the Stakeholders Advisory Committee.
Yep.
It needs to go before the county council. It needs to go before the city council. This is the kind of stuff. I mean, the homeless emergency, I was told that we've been under repetitive homeless emergency declarations since 2017, which means that there's money coming to the county and our states that's federal money and state money that could be earmarked to solve these problems, but it's not coordinated and it isn't going to the bottom rung of our society, which is where we need to self-organize. Because I guarantee you, well, I don't guarantee it. I'm not going to put that out in the universe. What I'm going to say is that the habit pattern in Whatcom County is to avoid this. We can change that habit pattern. It's just a habit pattern. Powerful coaches all know, change the behavior, change the belief around it, change the habit pattern, you completely change the results. And that's what Debbie's been doing all along. So I'm going to stop again, Deb. Keep going.
Okay. It's interesting that that article is, that long ago, and it's concerning that we don't have information that looks like it's addressing any of it. What I do know that part of so there was reference to the quiet resignation of a lot of people just quitting their jobs after the stress of COVID. And what it makes me wonder is, did we just kind of go, you know what, we can't do anything about it, and we're just gonna not talk about it anymore, which is obviously also concerning. But there does feel like, for some circumstances, that people have not been able to touch their roots to see that they can make a difference, that they can change what's going on in the world. And they're somehow to celebrate everyone as individuals in order to get people excited again and say, yes, we can do this. And yes, we need cheerleaders. Joy, you're good at doing little ditties. Have you got anything in your back pocket that you can get us all excited about? I mean, I am excited for our future. There are some things that I've seen that are concerning, but I do believe that presenting in this way and connecting with the individuals that we have that will in the future, it will make all the difference in the world. And with that, Joy, I'm going to give it back to you because I'm starting to get fuzzy.
No sweat. I mean, this is enough to get fuzzy over. So anybody else, if you want, especially Irene, if there's certain organizations or people that you want to make reference to so that we can add them into the story, I actually have to go look up the Yavapai County stuff that Don Kirshner talked to us about, because I didn't even realize how much you working with Don Kirshner, and it's the Matter of Time organization and the Return to Honor.org out of, that he built. He basically talks about this stuff. I'll go get those notes. But in the meantime, Irene, talk about a bunch of the people and the groups and the organizations that you've been networked with for a long time that actually helped you and helped us all move forward.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Deb. I just so appreciate all this information you bring forward, because you're stellar in your support of your grandkids and your children. And of course, I'm the eternal optimist. I know we can do this. I know that it must be done. And Don was one of the first, well, he was the first person I connected with after Delancey Street, I guess. But Don was, he's just a very special person. And he feels like my little brother. And I'm the youngest of my family, so but we our hearts are in the same place. We have the same goals, and I'm very excited about what he has done in Arizona. And but my mind is kind of foggy as far as bringing up different organizations there everywhere. And we've got a small group of people in Skagit County. Chris Hoke is a minister, and he works with the Hispanic people, and they have a coffee that they sell, and he has a book that he's written, and he's just doing marvelous things. But with more support and more money, going on to a search engine and looking for anything that's reentry or alternative of any sort, you could spend a lifetime with the information that's there. And so I think your plate is probably full with some of the things that Joy and Deb have brought up this morning, and that's already on our conference information. But because of what Deb was saying and how she was explaining, I'd like to give a personal story about something that I have observed. I've lived on my farm for a long, long time, and I have a granddaughter who loves our swimming pool. It's only 40 years old, so she's totally grown up with it. And but she has been able to invite many of her friends, and all of her friends that she invites with small children that come to my backyard, all of them enroll their children in an alternative school. And I am stunned. I am absolutely stunned, because I was raised by a dad who told you to jump, but you didn't know how high to jump. And I also copied that, because that was my norm. But my daughter changed things. She didn't like the way I parented, and I had the short fuse in the family, so I usually was the first one to interact when the kids weren't behaving. But and I want to say I'm very, very proud of my kids. They turned out very well. But so anyhow, my daughter raised her daughter, who's the granddaughter that I'm talking about, differently. And I have watched as she has parented my great grands now, and I just marvel, and she has taught me so much. But the one thing that just sticks out in my mind is she never raises her voice. She's very kind. She's very composed. And she'll she'll have a suggestion for one of the kids as they did not obey. And again, there was no raising the voice. She just stated it again. And usually the third time, she'll look at them until they look at her, which is usually pretty quickly, within a few seconds. And she'll say, "Yes, Mom." And then they look at her and they go, "Yes, Mom." And they obey. And it's it's a miracle. It actually works. I've done it. And I said, well, where did you learn that? She says, I just did it one day and it worked. And so this is, but this is a kind of attitude I see in the younger generations, and the kids are just, they're delightful to be around.
They are.
Of course, I like
can
kids
second
anyhow.
voice that.
Yeah, they're just kids having fun, but they're not mean to one another, and they don't poke fun. And it's, so there's a new way of doing things, thank goodness. And we know that what we've been doing isn't much working. So but I'm very, very pleased and excited, and I don't know that I have anything more to say on this. Debbie's done a
I think Alona
stellar
wants to speak
job.
also. I'm going to share my screen. Alona, I saw that you posted this in the chat, so I just shared the
Thank you.
screen, Brain and Behavior Research Foundation. Go ahead,
Yes,
Alona.
I just wanted to quickly say, at the end of my presentation on Tuesday about the incarceration system, I spoke about this pilot project in Florida and the results that they had. And I've just posted 3 different links. The judge in question who actually drives this is Judge Stephen Leifman. And they just got a new and bigger facility in October 2021. And these are a few links of him talking about the connection of mental health. And actually there's one, I just wonder, it's not this one, it's another one where he says the system's treatment of those who have mental illness is the definition of insanity. Yeah, so I just, as I said, there are 3 different videos to look at.
Is this one that I just posted, the Duke Law? Is this that judge talking?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Okay, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to catch this other one. And I'm going to post that one too, because I think it's useful when people can see. I mean, we're not talking out at the top of our heads. This is real. Now, and I really want to reiterate that 13 years ago when I started, we looked on Google. Now, whether it's just that Google's got smarter at tracking stuff, but a lot of this stuff is new stuff. It's been bubbling up over the last 5 years. Prior to now, I've got a binder in the office that's like this big, and then there's another binder this big and another binder this big. And they have like old statistics, all the statistics we could find. We had a specialist who was an archivist. He worked with us for a while, and he started to just print out all these old studies. Guess what? He's a smart guy. As an archivist for the United States working in DC, he's learned that oftentimes studies are published, information goes online, and then a couple years later, somehow it manages to drop off the wavelength, and corporations or governments take it down and it gets lost. So what he did is he had us print everything out. So we've got entire binders of print research and statistics and information from mental health to reentry to prison statistics, etc. And now, though, what we found, and I couldn't find any of these things. He was an archivist, so he knew what to look for, and so he could type in exactly certain words to get certain information to come out of Google. So he got all this information I couldn't find as a layman. But now, as a layman, you can go in and you can get information, and it's amazing. And Karen, I'd like you to find the name of that encyclopedia that Stan was talking about yesterday, the one for all the solutions, because I'd like to post that link in here in a minute too, because we're about over our time for this morning.
Okay, I'll look for it.
But here's the judge. This is what you were talking about, I think, Alona. The judge calls systems treatment of those who have mental illness the definition of insanity. So this is that particular post, and it's an interview. It looks like it's a transcribed interview with him.
Yep.
That talks about this on NPR. So this is permeating society. What the whole point of doing all this is to let us know is we're not on the fringe anymore. We're not on the cut. I mean, we're not on the fringe. We are mainstream. The Restorative Community Coalition is mainstream solutions for alternative business. And that's why we're coming out and we're talking again about what we can do. Because it didn't matter in our county that our people said no. It didn't matter in 2009. It didn't matter in 2008. It didn't matter in 2015. It didn't matter in 2013. It didn't matter in 2017. And it isn't mattering right now in social media because the county is dedicated to wanting to build their new facility and put mental health services inside the jail system. Do you know that there's actually studies that have been done that prove that it's there's a Supreme Court ruling that says you should not put these facilities inside a jail system. You shouldn't be forcing people to go online and have to defend themselves from video conferencing. We're guaranteed trial by jury in physical. I mean, we're supposed to have rapid jury trials. We've got people in the Whatcom County Jail that have been there for over a year facing a third strike. That's not right. So we have constitutional problems, we have judicial problems, we have corporate problems, we have all this kind of problems out there. We can't solve it doing it the way we've done it for 30 years. It's not working. We have to do it differently. We need a change of heart. We need a change of philosophy. We need a paradigm shift. We need people working together in community the way we used to do it. Take over the screen, Karen, and put it up there if you find that encyclopedia, because we actually have to change the way we do business on social media. We have to create new means of doing social media. We have to create new ways of getting together. And the best way is person to person in local communities, little tiny pods of people working together with heart, with caring, with love, with concern for our neighbors' children. So this is an encyclopedia that a friend of ours put together and has been posting to us, and I haven't had time to post it anyplace else yet. It's an encyclopedia of world problems and human potential. This is an incredible encyclopedia. It's an incredible resource for how you can go in. It's all done on Wikipedia style Excel spreadsheets, open networks. You can also put up in a minute there, after I'm talking, Karen, if you could put up Stan's website where he's talking about things. But this is these are amazing resources. We can do this. It's not a fantasy. It's a big idea for a big time when it's the biggest opportunity in human history to turn around the abuse of humans and the pretense that we're not good enough to raise our own children and raise a family and build healthy communities. This is our mutual friend, Stan, who put together this main page and othernetworks.org. And there's a whole list of conferences and groups of people all over the world doing things right. There are all kinds of resources. We simply have to unite. So at 1 o'clock, anybody have anything else to say before we close off this morning recording, and then we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock? Anybody have anything else to say? Nope, it's all good. Okay. Well, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Doug Gustafson from Homes Now Not Later will be coming on the call, and he'll be talking about what's happening with Homes Now Not Later, with his Unity Village and his Safe Haven, and the various things that are going on in tiny home villages that are being constructed in Whatcom County and in this area, and a little bit about trends. But mostly he's going to be talking about what is coming up and why is it important that we as a community come together to support and to really start speaking out to our elected officials. They need support. They've been beaten down also by a depressed system and they've been in their own way terrorized within the system to have to stay within these rules and those regs, and you know, you're supposed to do this, and most of us were silenced the last 2 years. Most of the citizen voices were silenced, and because of trauma, people stopped talking. It wasn't working anyway, so now people are sort of in that place between fight and flight, and they're just silenced and paralyzed. So at this point, it's important that we start galvanizing ourselves together. Doug will be here. We hope to have more of you be willing to engage him in conversation. So thank you all very much for coming today. Have a good time, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock.